Yo, 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 what up, y'all? It's your boy Rob coming back at you once again with another live stream. So before we get started, you already know what to do. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice. Smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers, and let's get it cracking. All right. So shouts out to everybody that's in the room already. We got Carla, Katsy, Honda 666, and we got my man Al. All right, make sure you guys drop some radiation emojis for the people that's in the building early. Also, make sure you guys drop some radiation emoji for the newest member, Desmond Peebles. Remember, guys, the memberships help. They are only 99 cents a pop. You get a free super chat every month with that. And also, you get access to the members only content. All right. So, we got 19 members on this channel right now. So, shout out to everybody because that's awesome. As soon as we hit 20, you know what I'm saying, we'll start doing some members only series over here as well. All right. Also, if you guys have not subscribed to the backup channels, take a moment, make sure that you subscribe to the backup channels as well. And to the replay viewers, if you guys are watching on the replay, please make sure that you leave a comment. You know what I'm saying? Let your boy know if you enjoy the content or whatnot, and hopefully we catch you in the next stream. All right. So here's my question for everybody. If you guys heard about the British pound crashing and the economic collapse that's going on over in the UK, give me a thumbs up. If you guys were not familiar with that situation, give me a thumbs down. Because if you're not familiar with that situation, you're about to be real familiar. All right. This is a new series. It's similar to All Money Ain't Good Money, but it's All Money Ain't Good Money Global. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be expanding All Money Ain't Good Money, but talking about the money and how it affects the entire world and how most of the world's problems are as a result of extorted or misused money. All right. UK is in turmoil as governments gamble to solve economic woes, fuels crisis instead. So let me ask you guys a question. If you guys have been paying attention to the economy, is the UK's economy and prices following a similar pattern to what's going on over here? Let me know what you guys think. New Prime Minister Liz Truss proposed tax cuts that sent shockwaves through financial markets, causing the pound to plummet and putting her political figure in sudden doubt. All right. If anyone thought Britain was due for a period of calm after Boris Johnson's tumultuous premiership, no one told his successor. The country was already facing an ugly menu of challenges, but the proposed solution by Prime Minister Liz Truss has quickly sent the economy spiraling into chaos, threatening consequences both immediate and long-lasting for many Britons. Her conservative government's $48 billion plan to slash taxes, particularly for the country's highest earners, has sent shockwaves through financial markets, causing the pound to plummet and leaving Truss' own political future in sudden doubt just 3 weeks after taking office. Not good. Now, let me ask you guys, what do you all think the economy looks like over there? What do you guys think that the economy is looking like over there? After days of turmoil, the UK drew a rare stinging rebuke from the International Monetary Fund, which urged the government to reevaluate a plan that may fuel already soaring inflation and increase economic inequality. The Bank of England, the UK's central bank, made its own emergency intervention on Wednesday, announcing it would buy up as much government debt as needed in an effort to restore stability. All right. So let's check out this little video that we have here.
The government has lost control of the economy. Sometimes.
So now, is that a good thing or a bad thing if the government loses control of the economy? I want to ask you guys this question here. If the government lost control of the economy here, what would that look like? What would that look like? Give me in the comment section some events, things that would take place. Because if you guys don't recall, we talked about this when we talked about Ukraine. Remember? All of this stuff is now coming back.
The government has lost control of the economy. Sometimes when the pound falls, it's because of external factors, international factors. This is self-inflicted. This is a government that on Friday took the reckless action which lost control of the economy. And for what? To cut taxes for those who are earning hundreds of thousands of pounds. And now so many working people across the country are facing trouble with their mortgages, trouble with their prices.
We're seeing the same impacts of Putin's war in Ukraine cascading through things like the cost of energy, some of the supply side implications of that. And that's impacting every major economy. And just the same, every major economy, you're seeing interest rates going up as well. So as we go...
Not to the same degree as in the UK.
Every major...
Are we seeing interest rates increase? If we're seeing interest rates increase, give me a thumbs up. If we're not, give me a thumbs down.
Major economy is dealing with exactly these same issues. And the Bank of England has made this timely intervention, doing what it should do, what the government should do, what the Chancellor and I are focused on, is delivering that economic growth plan, which is ultimately what's going to help people. It's going to give people the confidence.
Doesn't that sound like what Biden has? An economic growth plan? No, Biden's is called the economic relief plan, isn't it?
It's going to create jobs in the economy and keep people in work so that they can make it through the winter, benefit from that protection in energy, and continue to protect our standard of living.
Good luck. Keir Starmer, the emboldened leader of the opposition Labour Party, joined others in urging the government to address the crisis by recalling Parliament, which is on recess. Few Brits actually voted for Truss, who won the race to replace scandal hit Johnson by appealing to a crowd of 200,000 members of the ruling Conservative Party. She sold herself as a free market-loving heir to the divisive former leader, Margaret Thatcher, but polls in recent days suggest that the public at large has not taken to her policy proposals, further weakening her position. It all stems from her gamble to spur economic growth and combat what many experts say could be a long recession, spearheaded by a grim winter in which some families could struggle to pay for energy and food. Now, I want to ask you guys a question. Does that sound like what's going on here in the United States? If that does sound like what's going on here in the United States, let me know. Beyond the halls of Westminster and the frenzied trading floors of the City of London, the last week has left many Brits feeling a deepened sense of despair about the country's future. There are many millions of people across the UK who will find this winter incredibly difficult financially, said Rebecca McDonald, chief economist of the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, a charity focused on tackling poverty. These people had to watch the chancellor cut taxes for those who were better off, and it was incredibly difficult to hear. So now here's my question for everybody. Why would they cut the taxes for those who were better off instead of cutting the taxes for people who need the tax breaks? That's the question.
Come and get me. Halloween ends is just the beginning.
Now scratch your face.
This face? From classics to new exclusives, streaming now.
We got some breaking news to get to out of the markets now, with the Dow officially closing in a bear market. It is happening, down more than 300 points since last week, with the S&P and the NASDAQ both falling today also. It's happening at the same time as another key economic indicator, the British pound, hitting an all-time low today against the dollar. 1 pound equaling about $1.03. It's now back up to like $1.07. If you've ever wanted to visit the UK, now is not a terrible time considering the exchange rate. And if you're thinking, hey, a strong dollar, cool, I can get behind a strong dollar. Well, economists aren't so sure. One headline in the New York Times framing this as being good for the U.S., but bad for the rest of the world. And experts point out that in the past, dollar strength, like what we're seeing now, has led sometimes to some kind of financial or economic crisis. I want to bring in now our NBC business and tech correspondent, Brian Chung. So, Brian, the Dow now officially in a bear market. We had talked last week, it was maybe flirting with the bear market. They have now sealed the deal. Does that actually mean anything functionally for human beings who are not day-to-day stock traders?
Well, functionally, it means don't look at your 401 401k for right now. But when you take a look at the bear market that we entered officially today, as of the market close, that is because the Dow fell by over 1% today. Essentially, what that means is that from the peak of the Dow earlier this year, it's been a 20% fall. The S&P 500 had already reached that watermark in July. Now, what we're talking about here is a stock market that's obviously been ugly in 2022. All this built around the fears that we're seeing from a Federal Reserve that could be raising interest rates into a recession, the cost of lowering high inflation in this country, compounding all of that with.
So now here's my question. What is the media saying about a recession, and what is the Biden administration saying about a recession? Have you guys heard anything? What have they been saying about it?
The developments we've seen overseas, as you mentioned, with the British pound falling as much as 4.4% today. That might be good for American travelers, but not good for the international picture, because a strong dollar has, in some cases in the past, led to financial crises in other countries.
What does it mean for exports and such? How seriously should we be taking this news about the pound and the dollar if we're not planning to travel to the UK anytime soon?
Well, if you're talking about from the American viewpoint, that would make American exports certainly more expensive for other buying countries. Now, the overall concern, though, isn't necessarily the flow of goods and trade. What the real concern is going to be is whether or not other countries that have large amounts of dollar reserves, without getting too much into the weeds, might have to defend their currencies. We saw the Japanese government, for example, last week, after the Federal Reserve's rate hike on Wednesday, move to try to support their currency. And if you rewind to 1997, the Thai baht had a big issue because of a strong dollar, something we certainly don't want to get to right now.
Now, I'm going to show you guys some other financial crises that are going on in some future episodes, but I don't know if you guys are aware, but the same thing happened with the Filipino peso. And shout out to my man, DJ Elmo. What's up with it, bro? And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys haven't smashed the like button, please take a moment. Make sure you smash the like button. Also, if you haven't shared the video out, please share it out. And if you're not subscribed, go ahead and hit the bell.
Argentina, Egypt, Kenya, indebted countries to watch, Hallie.
So there's that. So now here it says the market reaction to trust plans sent government borrowing costs soaring, likely to be met with higher inflation and interest rates that will in turn mean more expensive credit cards and mortgages. Now, let me ask you guys a question. Are we seeing the same thing here? Yeah, that's facts, DJ Elmo. That absolutely happened. Even threatening a subprime housing crisis for people who can't make repayments. The nose-diving pound will also make everyday products in Britain more expensive as importers face spiraling costs. The mini budget wasn't accompanied by spending cuts or a traditional independent cost estimate that might have eased market fears, if not for public criticism of its leaders' priorities. The government argument is simple. In theory, it wants to supercharge Britain's sluggish economy by any means necessary, even if it means short-term stocks. It was left up to Treasury Chief Kwasi Kwarteng to drop the biggest bombshell in Parliament on Friday: a tax cut for people who earn more than $150,000, which is $160,000 per year. This would make Britain more competitive, as well as reward enterprise and work, incentivize growth, he told lawmakers. It will benefit the whole economy and the country. It doesn't seem like that's what happened. It looks like it really hurt the country, is what it looks like. It doesn't look like that did much of an effect at all. You know what I'm saying? In its defense, the government points to measures at the other end of the scale, such as cutting the lowest tax bracket and an earlier pledge to freeze household energy bills until 2024. Now, this is an issue as far as freezing the energy bills, because I don't know if anybody's aware of this, but DJ Elmo, what's going on with the energy prices in the UK? A part of a 150 billion pound package to support public support package that ranks among the biggest in history. Sounds a lot like what's going on in the United States, doesn't it? Something McDonald at Joseph Rowntree Foundation called very important and very significant. NBC News has reached out to the British Treasury for comment. Much of Europe is mired in an energy crisis, thanks in part to Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But critics say Britain is uniquely vulnerable because Brexit has caused its economy to underperform. Truss supporters have dwindled to a relatively small coterie of hardcore economic right-wingers, with many others to the right of the political center deeply critical. As a conservative, I find it quite worrisome. Dominic Grieve, who was a member of parliament with the party until 2019 and served as an attorney general, told NBC News. It seems to me a very high-risk strategy and not one you would associate with a conservative government. Current conservative lawmaker Simon Hoare labeled that the government's actions inept madness in a tweet on Tuesday. Others have resorted to anonymous briefings to an array of British newspapers to say Truss days may be numbered, unheard of so soon into a prime minister's tenure. Many conservatives now openly worry about the political optic of a plan centered on doling out cash to the super rich during a cost of living crisis. So I got a question for you guys. In the short term, what do you guys think is going to happen with the British economy? Do you guys think that it's going to improve, or do you guys think that it's going to get worse? That's my question for you guys. Polls suggest opposition left of center Labour Party has soared to leads as high as 17 percentage points, although an election isn't due to be held until early 2025 at the latest. The Conservative Party has always branded itself as the sober, fiscally responsible force of the British center-right. Truss has remained silent through the crisis, but her supporters have departed from that self-image to dismiss the backlash as the product of the financial system too wedded to a failed orthodoxy of the past. But there's a widespread perception, according to Tim Bale, a politics professor at Queen Mary University of London, that this time the markets aren't being irrational. All right. So now, as you guys can see, there are some serious issues going on with the British pound. Now, my question for people is, why do you all feel that the mainstream media is not really concentrating on that? Why are they not talking about that? What do you think? Give me you guys' best ideas of why you think they wouldn't say too much about this. The UK's crisis of confidence was years in the making. So what this is implying is that this is something that was just waiting to happen. The UK thought it had all the trust of the markets until it didn't. Now homeowners and businesses will likely have to pay the price. All right. So there's no confidence anymore in the UK's markets. What does that mean? That's highly problematic, especially for the currency. What does that imply for the currency? Yeah, absolutely. So here's my question. What would be the events that we will expect to see in the UK? Britain is in a self-inflicted financial crisis, years in the making, that threatens to accelerate the economy's dive into a recession. Now, if Britain goes into a depression, do you think that at some point in the near future, the United States will go into a depression? That's the question. So DJ Elmo says the UK government has reversed the 45% for high earners tax after public outcry. I bet they did. The energy price has moved from 1,900 to 2,500. That's 600 pounds. The UK chancellor was caught having champagne with hedge fund managers shortly after announcing the budget. I bet she was. So again, there's that. You know what I'm saying? Is anybody surprised by any of that? Katsy says, because it reflects what is happening in the U.S. If we see how bad it is over there, then we can no longer close our eyes to what's happening here. Facts. And I got to agree with AB, because they don't want us to prepare. Right. If you guys agree with Katsy and AB, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. I think that what will happen is if they started to concentrate on this in the media here in the United States, what would end up happening is people would start to prepare. People would start changing their spending and buying habits. And I think that that would accelerate what we already have coming, which is nothing good. if you ask me, that right there is what I think will happen. Okay. Real quick, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys haven't smashed the like button, please make sure you guys smash the like button. Also, if you guys haven't shared the video out, please make sure you guys help your boy out by sharing the video out. So now here it says, and the country's new prime minister is coming under intense pressure to blink. In the weeks since the government unveiled the biggest tax cuts since 1972, scant with detail of how they would be financed, the pound has crashed to its lowest ever level against the dollar. The cost of insuring the British government debt against the risk of default has soared to its highest since 2016, and the Bank of England has been forced to intervene amid concerns about the nation's pension funds. So now here's my question. A lot of people in the United States have been encouraged to put their money into pension funds because of the United States default on Social Security. So now my question is, what do you guys think the United States pension funds are looking like? If you took a look at your 401k right now, would you like what you saw? What happens next will determine just how deep looming recession proves. Central to that question is whether Liz Truss's 3-week-old administration can restore its credibility with investors. All right. So as you can see, the value of UK assets has tumbled since Liz Truss became prime minister. And as you guys can see with these graphs, each of these different colors represents different assets. They're all bottomed out. Okay. They started at this point right here. They've all bottomed out. That is not a good look for a new politician. And I agree. Ricky says would be a run on consumer goods. Absolutely. Could possibly be a run on the banks as well. So now here it says Friday's mini budget has become a flashpoint, not just for investors' short-term concerns about unfunded tax cuts at a time when inflation is running close to a 4-decade high. Now, if you guys remember when I did that video a couple days ago where we talked about all of the tax breaks that the United States plans on giving statewide through the state governments? So again, this is why I'm telling you, me personally, I'm kind of cautious about this kind of thing. This kind of thing worries me, and I still believe that a lot of the economic issues that we have now, despite the fact that some of them are as a result of what's going on with Ukraine and Russia, a lot of that stuff is because of all of the money that was given out during COVID-19. I truly believe that. Or the Bank of England's failure to contain price growth. It has given sharp focus to their long-held fears about Britain, its current account deficit, its fractious relationship with its closest trading partner, and above all, a mistrust of what successive politicians promise. Now, when it comes to fiat currency like the dollar, or when it comes to fiat currency like the pound, is trust in the government and trust in politicians important when it comes to stabilizing the price? If it is, give me a thumbs up. If it's not, give me a thumbs down. Shout out to my man Mike Mellis John B1. What up with it, bro? It's the latest in a long line of self-imposed economically illiterate decisions. Now, have we made decisions that could be described as that here in the United States? Self-imposed economically illiterate decisions? If you ask me, I would say we have. We've been making very bad economic decisions, especially since Biden took office. But honestly, since the inception of the country, we've been making bad economic decisions. And shout out to Carla Lockhart for answering the Nightbot. Appreciate it. It started with Brexit, and now we're seeing its latest iteration. As markets tumbled, the Bank of England was forced into action to prevent a gilt market crash, and deployed a variant of policy tool Truss spent recent months criticizing. It promised to buy whatever long-dated gilts were needed to restore order to the market. And if I'm not mistaken, DJ Elmo, correct me if I'm wrong, that's talking about the debt that the Bank of England paid back. So So they're purchasing their debt back to try to get some kind of control and order over their currency. Shout out to my man Lunch. What up with it, bro? That set off a rally in long-dated gilts, but increased two risks: that the bank will have to raise rates even further within weeks, and that investors could take fright at whether the BOE is bankrolling the government. So now, especially with DJ Elmo saying that he saw this woman having drinks with the fund managers, that is definitely a concern. I gotta agree. If you guys agree with Ricky, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. I do agree. I think that all hell will absolutely break loose after the midterms. I think it's going to get real bad. For now, though, the BOE has bought the government time to fix its credibility, according to Callum Pickering, senior economist at Borenberg Bank. How they use that time will be crucial. Top bankers in the city of London yesterday urged the chancellor of the Exchequer, Kwasi Kwarteng, to reassure markets before a planned statement on November 23rd. The International Monetary Fund, which came to the UK's rescue in 1976, has already called on the government to reconsider its tax cuts. Famed economists are lining up. Look at this. Famed economists are lining up to warn the UK is displaying the hallmarks of an emerging market. That's not good. Speaking to the BBC, former Bank of England Governor Mark Carney accused Truss's government of undercutting the nation's economic institutions. Let me ask you guys a question. When it says that the UK is displaying the hallmarks of an emerging market, what does that mean? So as you guys can see right here, what DJ Elmo is saying is that the Bank of England is buying UK gilt, is the Bank of England in effect lending money to the government. And they're lending money to the government because the government doesn't have any, which is bad. That's not a good thing. The prime minister stood by her plans on Thursday, saying economies around the world are facing tough pressures. I'm very clear the government has done the right things, she told BBC local radio. This is the right plan. So let's listen to what she said.
This is the right plan that we've set out. This is about making sure that people are going into the winter not worried about ultra high fuel bills, which is what we were looking at. It was simply unconscionable that we could have allowed that to happen, and we could allow people to be facing that fear of not being able to pay their fuel bill. And it's also important that we're taking steps to improve growth levels in our economy, because if we don't, we're not going to get the high wage jobs. We're not going to get the opportunities. We're not going to get the investment. What I've been doing is taking action to help ordinary households who would have been facing fuel bills of up to £6,000.
Haven't you been reading the news?
We have taken action. We've taken action by the government stepping in, making sure that nobody is paying fuel bills.
Ms. Truss, this is a crisis.
More than £2,500.
This is a crisis, and many people are saying you've made it worse by your actions. Are you going to reverse what was announced in the mini budget in order to at least make things better now for my listeners who are not sleeping at night?
I don't accept the premise of the question. The action we've taken has been helping people with their fuel bills. That will start off this weekend. It's been helping people with their tax bills. People are going to pay less national insurance, but we are facing difficult economic times. I don't deny this. This is a global problem, but what is absolutely right is the UK government has stepped in and acted.
So yeah, she's not going back on any of this, and in my opinion, I don't think that she did the right thing when it came to this at all. Shout out to Val. I don't think that she did the right thing with this at all. As a matter of fact, all of these economic situations that we've been looking at, if you ask my opinion, none of them have been handled appropriately. If you ask my opinion, none of these situations has been handled appropriately. if you guys have watched all of my videos, the All Money Ain't Good Monies, and if you guys have watched the Russia Report, and if you guys have watched a lot of the Ukraine series, I don't think that any of these situations have been handled. Remember when we were talking about Ukraine and I said that once they sanction Russia, it's going to start some serious economic issues worldwide? Remember I said that? Now we're looking at the results. You know what I'm saying? The problem for Truss is that she made the tax cuts the centerpiece of her program for government. About turn so early in her tenure would be politically fatal. She only won office thanks to the backing of grassroots party members. Most MPs in her own party voted against her, leaving her exposed to a backlash if they sense her policies will lead to defeat. While Britain wait to see if her gamble on trickle-down economics pays off, they face a dramatic increase in borrowing costs, something that could trigger a housing crash and deepen any recession or rounding of swinging public spending costs. Between Brexit, how far the Bank of England got behind the curve, and now these fiscal policies, I think Britain will be remembered for having pursued the worst macroeconomic policies of any major company in a long time, said former U.S. Treasury Secretary Lawrence Summers, now a professor at Harvard University and paid contributor to Bloomberg Television. So let's check out what this guy had to say here. What do you guys think about these commercials? These commercials are horrible. And I actually figured out that I still do have a subscription to Bloomberg, and yet and still, you still got to deal with these advertisements. You know what I'm saying?
Take on what the BOE did today, intervening into the long end of the market for a couple weeks.
This was a market maker of last resort operation, given the severe problem being created by forced liquidations associated with pension funds who had been hedging their long-term liabilities. I think it was the right thing to do, given the technical factors that had arisen in the market, and it's obviously brought some important stability to the gilt market. It does not resolve any of the fundamental contradictions in British policy or address the tension between the anti-inflation imperative and the massive fiscal expansion being engaged in by the British Treasury, and the ultimate need for tight monetary policies if major inflation is to be avoided. So they took an aspect of the situation that was hemorrhaging, and they put a tourniquet around it. That was the right thing to do, but it does not by any means mean that Britain is out of the woods.
So, yeah, I actually want to see this little video clip that's next, because this is that prime minister, and the black guy is the guy who's in charge of the central bank in the UK. And I actually am curious to see what they had to say.
Sort of U-turn, because it is only a U-turn in part of what spooked the market last week.
Exactly, Anna. The pressure cooker just got far too hot in Birmingham for the government to handle. The Chancellor's actually just over my shoulder giving a round of interviews. We'll hope to hear from him ourselves. He said that the 45p rate cut was becoming a huge distraction from a set of what he said were strong policies. Of course, the government had also announced this massive energy bailout, so it was desperately trying to cling back to the political credit for that. That he was asked what changed. He said, we listened to people, we get it. He was asked, has he considered resigning? He said, not at all. But really, this had started to look inevitable. The Prime Minister had thrown him under a bus yesterday, blamed him for this top rate of tax cut. And there was so much pressure from Michael Gove, the former Cabinet Minister, saying that it was not a display of Tory values. And so the question now is how much of the rest of the package can survive, because this may dampen the political concerns, but really for markets, there are a lot of other concerns because, of course, this is funded by borrowing. The OBR was effectively gagged in not allowed to give a forecast, and we're not expecting to hear from it until November the 23rd. So the concerns for investors still very much remain, even though the pound has been boosted by this news.
So now here's my question. Does it sound like Britain is moving towards a balance of payments crisis? If it sounds like the British economy is moving towards a balance of payment crisis and a possible currency devaluation, give me a thumbs up. Now, another question that I have is, if that's what we see going on, what are things that you can do here in the United States to preemptively protect yourself if this starts to move west, which, if you ask me, it's already moving west? What are things that you can do to protect your purchasing power? The crisis of confidence had been brewing for years. Dubious claims from the ruling conservatives, ranging from Brexit's benefits to parties in the Downing Street during lockdown, together with the recent ousting of the Treasury's top official and the sidelining of the country's budget watchdog, meant investors didn't believe the chancellor when she promised to stabilize the public finances. Now, do you guys think that this crisis of confidence had anything to do with the plunging value of their pound? Shout out to my man Vince. If you ask me, this definitely had an impact on the value of that pound going down the toilet. Okay. The markets aren't willing to trust the Trust administration's claims that it would deliver medium-term fiscal sustainability on the basis of its word alone, said Alan Monks, an economist at JP Morgan Chase Company in London. It reflects a broader distrust in markets about how UK policy has been evolving, and in our view, that distrust is entirely justified. That makes it even worse if economists are saying that the distrust is entirely justified, because that means there's probably some pretty bad things on the way. That means that there's probably some pretty bad things on the way. I don't think that they're anywhere near correcting this situation. Nothing illustrates it better than the slide in the pound. It's fallen from a high of more than $2 in 2007, just before the financial crisis, to $1.50 at the time of the Brexit referendum, and is now on the brink of parity with the dollar. A century of decline for the British pound. So now what's interesting is that the pound has been not doing very well for quite some time. As you guys can see, since 1925, there's been a downward trend. This is where it's at now, at $1.10. So this has been trending downward for quite some time. So my question is, what does a downward trend in the British pound mean? What does that mean for people in the UK? Because the UK has damaged its once strong credibility with a poorly managed Brexit and persistent threats of a UK-EU trade war. It no longer enjoys the benefit of the doubt, said Brandenburg's Pickering. So now, how many people knew that there were always persistent threats of UK-EU trade war? They do not talk about that in the media very often. You know what I'm saying? In the media, what they talk about is how well everything is doing and how well everything is going over there. Remember when the Ukraine crisis first happened, the people were on the news saying this kind of stuff doesn't happen. This is Europe. Well, we're looking at it happen. I mean, we're looking at it. And this is nobody else's fault but their own. There's been no intervention from anybody else in the world. This is all European managed money, and it's failing. You know what I'm saying? For JP Morgan's Monks, the doubt set in before the 2016 Brexit referendum, accelerated after the shock result, and culminated in recent attacks on the central bank, the judiciary, and the civil service. That background of mistrust may have obscured some of the mini budget's beneficial reforms. Simon French, chief economist at Panmure Gordon and Company, said the mishandling of the mini budget was a shame because several of the supply side reforms in areas like planning have real merit. All right. So here's this historic giveaway. Kortig's tax cuts are the largest since Anthony Barber were chancellor. So you guys can see here, this is Anthony Barber with 50.7 billion pounds of tax cuts in 1972. And here in 1993, there's $32.2 billion in tax cuts. So that's wild, man. Nevertheless, Friday's act of fiscal largesse, being unfunded, marketed a major break from economic traditions of Truss's Conservative Party. Here's my question. How are you going to give tax breaks without funding for them? How do you do that? How does that work out mathematically? How does one do that? How do you replace the money? And I agree. Slump in pound makes imports more expensive. Facts. So that means that the cost of goods in the UK is doing what? In addition to the inflation, if the import price is increasing, what else is increasing? The government still needs to set out how it will cover the additional borrowing required to fund its $45 billion of tax cuts and further 60 billion pounds plus for its program to offset recent surge in energy bills. So in addition to the financial crisis, they're still trying to cover the energy crisis as well. So now, again, my question for everybody that's watching is, how are they going to do that without any funding? Where's the money coming from? Like my man Ricky Jones says, you can't just keep printing money forever, right? DJ Elmo says they're relying on projected growth to fund tax cuts. Interest rates will rise as the pound slumps. Absolutely. And interest rates will rise, and the central bank will probably put monetary policy on those interest rates to artificially increase them to try to do what they can to stabilize the pound. So all of that stuff, when those interest rates increase, what's that going to do for credit card payments? What's that going to do for car payments? What's that going to do for mortgages? What's that going to do for the housing market in general? That could cause a housing crisis. You know what I'm saying? Anytime interest rates skyrocket, it causes problems because those skyrocketing interest rates boost up monthly payments that people already can't afford. So now here it says those measures will drive up the country's budget deficit to 4.5% of the gross domestic product in the medium term. That would be enough to put the debt burden on an explosive path, hitting 101% of gross domestic product by 2030, according to Bloomberg Economics. Wow. In the meantime, the Bank of England will come under mounting pressure. The central bank has spent much of the year struggling to raise interest rates fast enough to combat a surge in inflation it failed to predict. Now we have to ask this question, right? We have to ask this question. Didn't we predict rising interest rates globally right at the beginning of the Ukraine crisis? So now my question is, if we can do this on a tiny little YouTube channel, right? What's wrong with these governments? What's wrong with these governments? If we can do this on a tiny YouTube channel, why do these governments have such trouble? Somebody make that make sense. So let's check this out. This says Britain's long road to a market crisis of confidence. And this is AB Promotions' favorite music here, so I'll just let it play.
Britain is facing a crisis of confidence from the financial markets, which actually has been years in the making. Today's Big Take looks at the sudden desertion of trust from financial markets after the Truss government revealed its economic plans and the history behind that. Bloomberg's Philip Aldrich joins us now with more. And Philip, we've heard the Prime Minister doubling down on her commitment to the policies that were announced last week. So for anyone who was expecting some sort of U-turn, that's not been the direction of travel so far from the British government. But as I said there in the introduction, these concerns about the UK, long in the making. What's the backstory behind those?
Yeah, so it's all a question of fiscal credibility since the mini budget on Friday, and that's what spooked markets. They just don't believe the government's word, the Tory party's word any longer. That's the party of sound money, is traditional fiscal credibility compared with the Labour Party. That's been the sort of framework of people's and markets thinking. Of course, what has happened since, effectively, you can look just before the Brexit referendum in 2016. There's been this kind of lackadaisical attitude towards that referendum in Scotland, which was an existential threat to the UK. Then you had sort of a loose connection with the truth in some of the campaign statements during the Brexit referendum, and all of this is starting to erode confidence in the structures of government, and obviously in Boris Johnson. And then went a little further. There was
okay, guys, when there's a loss of confidence in government structures, like what he just talked about, what happens to the money? And facts, AB, the world is correct. If you guys agree that the world is correct, give me that thumbs up. If you don't, give me a thumbs down.
Attacks on the judiciary, and we've had questions about experts for quite a while now. And then, of course, Liz Truss in the campaign trail just went, all guns blazing against the experts, talking about the Treasury blob, the institutions of the Bank of England, and the fiscal watchdog in the UK. All of these were kind of raised, just put under question by the government, and that combined with the sort of fiscal indiscipline in terms of just laying out the tax cut side and not actually saying how we're going to get the money back. So huge amount of borrowing.
Yeah.
Trust us, guys. We're going to bring the public finances under control. By the time after that sort of 6 years of erosion of confidence, nobody trusted them at the end of it.
Okay, so the trust was not there. Matt, jump in.
Well,
So now I got a question for you guys. After watching these live streams, right? After watching all the streams that I have done, and I encourage everybody and anybody that's been a watcher of this channel, a viewer of the channel for a long time, they can tell you that the content is never outdated. It's never outdated. It's always relevant. Even if it's a stream from last year, it's relevant. So I would advise everybody to watch the streams as they come up on your homepage. But my question is, as we're watching these different situations, is there a general formula that you guys are starting to notice with how to destroy an economy versus how to maintain one? And if you do notice that pattern, let me notice what you see as the best way to stabilize an economy.
I heard Valerie Titel earlier this morning kind of comparing the Truss economic plan to Reaganomics, and I'm sure that she would be flattered. I'm sure that's what they're aiming for, basically. But the British government, especially post-Brexit, in the midst of this incredible inflation, is in a very different position than the U.S. government was after Volcker had already stopped inflation, when everybody wanted to buy treasuries and our currency was strong. We had a current account. We had extra money in the current account. So why are they doing this now? It seems like the worst time to make this kind of economic decision.
Right. So the government believes that actually compared with the G7, we're in a relatively strong position because our debt to GDP ratio is below all other G7 members except for Germany. So you start from that relative strength, and as this, as sort of international economics ends up becoming a bit of a sort of competitive game, that's the bedrock of why they think they can push ahead with this kind of, these spending cuts, combined with the other big part of the reforms are supply side changes. So they're deregulating the city. They're going to deregulate all sorts of things from childcare to agriculture. These details were not in the Friday statement, but they are going to be coming out in the next few days. And you combine that that with what they're going to sort of, where they are going to backtrack a bit is they say that it isn't backtracking, but they are finally going to make some statements on what they're going to do on how to find savings to make the budget balance or just come into balance a little bit more. So the combination of evidence of growth reforms, the sort of strength of the debt to GDP ratio, relative strength of debt to GDP ratio, and some of the fiscal, some of the savings that they'll find, that's how they are going to explain, and they hope what they're doing, and they hope that markets are going to start to buy it. That's the aspiration, that kind of confidence will be restored because people will begin to understand the strategy. As you say, Reaganomics starts from a much stronger position, so that's the big question. I mean, are people going to buy it?
So there's that. Okay. The BOE is now all but guaranteed to respond to the looser fiscal policy with tighter monetary policy. Okay. What does that mean? Tighter monetary policy. When they say tighter monetary policy, what does that mean? Does that mean tight like how Rachel Dolezal's skin is wrapped on her face? Is that what that means? Or does that mean tight like those box braids that she had when she was standing in court that day when they let her off from that welfare fraud? That's my question. Money market traders are now betting on at least 150 basis point rise in interest rates by policymakers' next gathering on November 3rd. Setting aside the risk of an emergency hike outside of the scheduled meetings, that would be a move unprecedented since the bank was granted by independence by the government in 1997. Pricing also shows the benchmark rate will almost certainly hit 6% next year. Companies and homeowners are now bracing for a steep increase in borrowing costs. Now, let's break that down so that we have a good understanding of how this works. Why are the borrowing costs increasing? Why are the borrowing costs increasing? What's making the borrowing costs increase? And if we know that borrowing costs are increasing, is it a good idea to use credit to pay for stuff? That's my question for you guys. The biggest British firms already face the highest cost on record to refinance their debt. The Resolution Foundation estimates that an additional increase in rates could add more than £1,000 to the annual cost of a typical £140,000 mortgage. Analysts at Credit Suisse Group AG estimate house prices could easily fall as much as by 15%. So that right there would be indicative of a housing crisis. You know what I'm saying? And I agree, Ricky. Most of these big companies live off of government handouts. That's a fact. If you guys agree with that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. The UK then faces a grimmer outlook than what Truss promised in her summer campaign to succeed Boris Johnson when she talked of upending the business as usual economic strategy. Now, that's not working. It's definitely not business as usual with the economy in shambles. It's definitely not business as usual. It's business as unusual. Her own survival in office is even in question. She faces an election in 2024, and one opinion poll this week showed the opposition Labour Party's lead widening to 17 points, the most ever recorded by YouGov. It's not as if Truss wasn't warned. While campaigning for the premiership over the summer, her opponent, former Chancellor Rishi Sunak, described her tax policies as a fairy tale. Economists at Citigroup Incorporated even warned her ideas posed the greatest risk from an economic perspective to the UK. Yet and still, somehow she ended up getting in office, and now she's showing that her policies are indeed a serious economic threat. I mean, you guys can see the economy is having some serious issues here. Okay. One former Tory advisor who asked not to be identified was baffled by the decision to announce a mini budget without a statement from the Office of Budget Responsibility. Not having an OBR forecast looked like a deliberate snub to the markets, he said, a sign that the government didn't think it needed its sums to add up. The last week has tested that confidence. The next could stretch it to a breaking point. If you ask me, It's already at a breaking point. Let's ask DJ Elmo. Would you say, DJ Elmo, that the confidence is already at a breaking point, and that's one of the reasons why we're seeing the effects that we're seeing? I would say that it already is at a breaking point. And honestly, if you ask me, no pun intended, this is going to spread like monkeypox out of Europe. You know what I'm saying? If you ask me, that's what's going to happen. So now here's an article from CNN Business, and it says the pound's crash will make inflation worse and push interest rates higher. So now I want to ask you guys this question. Shout out to my man Solo T. What up with it, bro? I don't know if you guys are aware, but the dollar is very strong right now. All right. And with the current dollar strength, it's causing problems with other currencies. Okay. It's causing big problems with other currencies. It's making other currencies crash, just like how you see the British pound crash. So my question for everybody is, despite the fact that it might sound good that the dollar is doing very well right now, if the dollar's strength continues to be problematic for other currencies, do you see a future where many countries would move away from the dollar? And if they start to move away from the dollar, what's going to end up happening to the dollar? That's my question for you guys. What do you think is going to be the end results of that? And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, we got a 1-to-1 ratio popping off. We got 26 likes and 26 live viewers. So shout out and thank you to everybody that is watching and who has smashed the like button. If everybody could take a moment and hit that like button, we'll be at 52 likes, which would be awesome. What do you guys think? Let me know what you guys think about that. I'm curious to hear you guys' opinions on that. And let's check this out real quick.
Hybrid work is here, but for some,
she's going to still defend these tax cuts as we're sitting here watching this country's economy fail. And the other countries that benefit from this country's economy are going to start to see the effects of it as well.
Bank of England just raised interest rates again this week and said that the UK may already be in a recession. Are they right? Is the UK in a recession?
Well, that's a matter for the Bank of England and for the GDP figures are official figures. I think what is certainly true is that the world is facing an economic shock. First of all, the aftermath of COVID, and secondly, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which has pushed up energy prices. And what I'm determined to do as Prime Minister is make sure that we are doing all we can to grow our economy, all we can to attract business and investment into the UK so that we have a clear pathway to becoming a higher growth economy, more jobs, higher wages. That's what I am focused on.
And in that vein, your government just unveiled a new tax proposal this week that would reverse plans to raise the corporate tax rate. You've also proposed lifting the cap on bonuses for bank executives. In the U.S., President Biden is taking a very different approach, and obviously he has a different view on economic measures such as the one you're proposing. He tweeted this week, quote, "I am sick and tired of trickle-down economics. It has never worked. We're building an economy from the bottom up and middle out." And so President Biden is, in essence, saying that he thinks your approach doesn't work. The opposition in Parliament said.
Now, what I find fascinating about Joe Biden tweeting that is that his economic policy isn't working either. And all of our economic indicators are in the same exact directions as the UK. So my question to everybody is, what is he talking about? What is Joe Biden talking about?
Says you're recklessly running up the deficit and turning your back on so-called compassionate conservatism.
I don't really accept the premise of the question at all. The UK has one of the lowest levels of debt
what up with it, Tia?
in the G7, but we have one of the highest levels of taxes. Currently, we have a 70-year high in our tax rates. And what I'm determined to do as Prime Minister, and what the Chancellor is determined to do, is make sure we are incentivizing businesses to invest, and we're also helping ordinary people with their taxes. And that's why I don't feel it's right to have higher national insurance. And
now, let me ask, is DJ Elmo, if you're still in here, is 160,000 pounds a year, is that helping regular people with their taxes, or is that helping the upper middle class, lower upper class? Who is that tax break that they're proposing helping is my question.
Higher corporation tax, because that will make it harder for us to attract the investment we need in the UK. It will be harder to generate those new jobs. And I want the US economy to be successful as well. I want the European economy to be successful as well. I want freedom-loving democracies to succeed. And one of the things that we're doing here in the UK is moving forward.
It cracks me up how these people talk about freedom-loving economies when literally these people, these countries, are the ones that have encaptured the entire world. It's amazing just to listen to the nonsense, man.
On our infrastructure programs, road building, broadband, mobile telephones. And I know that is what the administration in the US is doing as well. But of course, we all need to decide what the tax rates are in our own country. But my view is we absolutely need to be incentivizing growth at what is a very, very difficult time for the global economy. And we've also put in place.
She said war is a difficult time for the global economy. That's not absolutely a true statement. It's basic macroeconomics that war stimulates the economy, which is one of the reasons why most of the countries of the world, which most of the countries of the world are smaller economies, are constantly being pushed into war by these larger countries. Shout out to Auburn. What up with it? So, like, and we got a confirmation from DJ Elmo that 160,000 pound tax cut, that tax cut for the people earning 160,000 pounds, it's helping the ultra high earners. But the UK government has abolished tax cuts today due to the public outcry. Yeah, that's facts. That's facts. Yeah, I know. I'm laughing, right? Jim Crow he's just babbling. You know what I'm saying?
A package of measures to support consumers with energy prices, to make sure that nobody is having to pay more than £2,500 on their bills, which is very important as well.
So, yeah, I don't think that she's going to be able to pull that off. Not with the way that energy costs are increasing. Good luck, lady. The UK's government's decisions to implement the biggest tax cut in 50 years while borrowing tens of billions of dollars to subsidize soaring energy costs this winter is a massive gamble that sent shockwaves through the financial markets. Since Friday, when Finance Minister Kwasi Kwarteng formally announced the plans, the British pound has plunged 5% against the US dollar, bringing its total losses this year to an eye-popping 21%. They lost 21% of their purchasing power. Just let that marinate. Just let that marinate. They lost 21% of their purchasing power. Their dollar can buy 21% less. Like, that's crazy. The euro, for comparison, is down about 15% against the dollar during the same period. Now, it may sound good that the dollar is ultra expensive and all that, but like I said, if too many economies start not being able to use the dollar because it's not practical for them, then you have to ask yourself, what's the next natural move to be done against the dollar in order to maintain these economies? That's why I always tell everybody, make sure that you protect your purchasing power. So let me ask everybody that's watching, because I know everybody that's watching knows some ways. What is the best way to protect your purchasing power? What is the best way to do it? And real quick, ladies and gentlemen, if you guys have not smashed the like button, please make sure that you take a moment and smash that like button. We got 27 people watching and we got 27 likes. If everybody can smash that like button and get us to 54, that would be awesome. We want to go up, not down, like the UK's money. Shout out to my man Jay Bird. What up with it? And I agree with Ricky. The NATO is nothing but a criminal syndicate. Facts. The turmoil doesn't end there. Investors have raced to dump UK government bonds as they worry about the extra 72 billion, which is $77 billion in borrowing due before April. So now let me ask you guys a question. If investors have raced to dump UK government bonds, what is that doing for the price of those bonds? What does that do to the price of those bonds? If investors have raced to dump UK government bonds, what does that rush of people selling off those bonds, what does that do to the price of them? What does that do? The yield on 5-year debt, which moves opposite prices, has jumped from about 3.6 to more than 4.4 over the past 2 trading sessions, an astronomical jump in a corner of the financial universe that typically lags movements in any tiny fractions of a percent. The Bank of England said in an emergency statement that it is monitoring developments in financial markets very closely, while the UK Treasury said it plans to ensure the sustainability of government finances would be released later this year. So as of right now, they still do not have a plan to ensure government stability. And I got to agree, Ricky, yeah, a lot of this, a large part, I wouldn't say all, but I would say a lot of this is a result of those sanctions that they put on Putin. I think it is Kwesi or Kwesi, AB. I think that is how you spell it. Let me see. Hold on, let me go back up and look real quick. Yeah, I think it is Kwasi. Is that Kwasi? Is that how you say it? Kwasi? But that may not bring an end to the chaos, the consequences of which won't be limited to markets. A falling pound is dire news for an economy that may already be in the recession, since it makes it more expensive to import essential goods like food and fuel. And that's what DJ Elmo was just talking about. If the currency is falling, that's going to skyrocket the price of imports. So that is going to skyrocket the price of food and consumer goods, because none of these established economies have a manufacturing base. So it's not like they're making their own products. See, that's one of the ways that China has an advantage. Not only is it a huge economy, but it's a huge manufacturing base as well. They manufacture the world's products. So they're not going to be affected by a lot of this stuff. And if they are affected, it's not in the same way as everybody else is affected. You know what I'm saying? It's not in the same way that everybody else is affected. I got to agree with Tia. It's time for this corporation to fold. Facts. That could fan decades-high inflation that's stoking a cost of living crisis for millions of households. So this is what is on the horizon for the UK. A possible cost of living crisis for millions of households. The British pound crashes to record low. So I mean, and it's still pretty low right now. You know what I'm saying? So I got a question for you guys. Is this, would you guys say that this is pretty important information? How, if you could rate this on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as importance goes, how would you rate this information? Would you rate this as important, or would you rate it as not very important? And if you rate it as important, the news is very quiet about it. Pay very close attention. Even when it comes to the United States, when it comes to our economy, they're not really giving you technical analysis and talking about the conditions of our economy. What you see a lot of is just, their passive plans on how to improve the economy or how to make it better. You see, everybody understands that the economy is not really doing well, but people are really not really understanding the mechanics of why it's not doing well. You know what I mean? And I'd agree with Tia. A 7 or an 8 is pretty important. Queasy, born on Sunday. That's what that means, huh? That's interesting. And I agree, Ricky. And that's one of the reasons why I said that this was really going to backfire, because Russia has been insulating itself from United States economic terrorism for a very long time. And everything was just going to bounce off Russia. And what's going to end up happening is that the United States is going to end up spending more money on attempting to punish and sanction Russia than Russia is actually going to spend defending itself, because it's already dollar-proofed itself. You know what I mean? So now my question, you guys seem to believe, and I agree with all you guys, that this is some pretty important stuff. Why is the media not even touching any of this stuff? They put out some interesting articles about it, but you don't really hear it talked about. If you ask me, it would be very wise to make sure that you start prepping things. You know what I'm saying? Buying like non-perishable food items and different things like that. Putting away a little bit of gold, putting away a little bit of silver, just to be on the safe side. Yeah, I agree, Val. It's important, but they're focusing on the coach cheating on Nia Long. And even if we're talking about sports, they're not focusing on Brett Favre. You know what I'm saying? The welfare king. So now the British pound plunged after the UK government unveiled plans Friday to fund new tax cuts by ramping up borrowing. That's amplified investor fears about the sustainability of the country's finances. I think that the United States has a lot more government debt than the UK. I think that the United States has a lot more government debt than the UK. So if this situation is looking like this in the UK, if the dollar is not maintained 100% the way that it needs to be maintained, what is this kind of situation going to look like here? That's my question. So do you guys have any answers for this? Why a plunging pound is bad news? I think that's a good question. Why is a plunging pound bad news? The pound hit a record low against the dollar on Monday, dropping near $1.03 before recovering to almost $1.07. When a currency loses value, it can be helpful for manufacturers, making their exports cheaper. But given the broader economic climate, few would frame the steep drop as a positive development. One big worry is what it will mean for paying for imports. And again, shout out to my man DJ Elmo. He highlighted this. The cost of energy is a particular concern as the weather gets cold. So now, if you guys are not subscribed to Blacklight Revelations 4, make sure you guys check out Blacklight Revelations 4, where we outlined this energy crisis months ago. And I agree. Absolutely. Buy your own seeds to grow your own food and secure safe shelter. Facts. Since commodities are typically paid for in dollars, a rallying greenback and falling sterling will mean higher prices for UK importers. And again, that's what DJ Elmo was talking about. And that's if the commodity prices increase, and we know that commodities are things that are put together to create goods to be sold, that's going to increase the price of the goods. And remember, energy is required to transport and manufacture those things. So that's going to contribute to a price increase as well. So basically what we're going to see over the long term, unless they can artificially ease the prices, is we're going to see some skyrocketing costs of consumer goods. And that's where we're at already here in the United States. You know what I'm saying? Let alone in the UK. The prices of things here, you go to the grocery store, things are more expensive than they've ever been. So now here it says, and while countries in Europe have been racing to stockpile natural gas as they try to reduce their reliance on Russia, the United Kingdom lacks similar storage capacity, leaving it even more exposed to prevailing market prices. There's been a rapid rise in borrowing costs for the government, businesses, and households. Now, if there's a rapid rise in borrowing costs, which those costs are caused because of the interest rate hikes, what is that going to do for monthly payments? What is that going to do for monthly payments? Investors expect the Bank of England will need to increase interest rates much more aggressively to get inflation in check. And if you ask me, that's what they're going to have to do here in the United States as well. You already see them doing this in a patterned way. They're already doing that. They've already increased interest rates a lot here. They are now penciling in a rise in rates to be about 6% by next spring. Rates haven't been that high since 2000. Given the central bank only started hiking in December when rates stood at 0.01, the rapid pivot could trigger substantial economic whiplash. The surge in interest rate expectations has already added another £1,000 a year to the coming increase in mortgages for a typical borrower, while sterling's fall means more expensive imports feeding through to higher inflation, said Bell. People living in the United Kingdom would see a decline in living standards as a result, he added. Now, how long do you think that people are going to put up with that? How long do you guys think that people will put up with this kind of stuff? Not being able to pay their bills. They're going to just automatically default because it's like, I'm never going to be able to pay for this stuff anyway. This is a scary thing. Halifax, who is owned by Lloyds Bank, removed some of its mortgage products, while Virgin Money stopped taking mortgage applications from new customers until later this week because of wild market movements. So now here it says they're asking for calm. So, you know, you're seeing all of this crazy stuff happen. Don't worry about it. Just be calm. It'll all blow over. You guys believe that? The disorder in financial markets pushed the Bank of England Monday to say it would look into the effects of the government's plan on inflation at its next scheduled meeting in November and would not hesitate to change interest rates if necessary. The bank issued its comments shortly after the UK Treasury said Quarting would outline plans to ensure the sustainability of UK debt over the medium term on November 23rd, and that the country's budget watchdog would be asked to release an updated forecast at that time. It's not clear, however, whether these comments will be enough to reduce alarm among investors who are worried about the government's unorthodox approach. It remains to be seen whether today's statement by the government and the Bank of England will be enough to ease these markets. Fears about government's fiscal policy, said Paul Dales, who is the chief UK economist at Capital Economics. Over the weekend, Quartig doubled down, hinting of more tax cuts to come and asserting that Friday's measures were just the start as the government goes all out in its attempts to foster growth. I don't think that it's going to foster any growth at all. If anything grows, it's going to be the inflation that grows. If you ask me, if anything grows, it's going to be the inflation. Mutabja Rahman, managing director for Europe at the consultancy Eurasia Group, thinks that Quartig and Prime Minister Liz Truss are unlikely to reverse course despite the stark reaction from investors. Yeah, I don't think so either. For now, they're going to try to ride out the storm, Rahman said. That leaves markets looking to the Bank of England to step in and stop the bleeding. I don't think that they're going to change their position, for one, because it'll look bad politically, despite the fact that because of these bad decisions, they've already lost a lot of credibility. So I don't think that they have anything to lose by sitting and watching the markets get worse. I think that politically they'd have a lot to lose if they went back and changed it, because for one, it would show that they made a bad decision, and two, it would show them going back on their own policy, which none of those decisions make it good for the people who are dealing with these high prices. You know what I'm saying? I think monetary policy is going to be the crucial determinant in the short term, said James Ashley, head of international market strategy at Goldman Sachs Asset Management. The central bank has given no indication it will hike interest rates outside its normal schedule of meetings. James Rossiter, head of global macro strategies at TD Securities, said the Bank of England is probably discussing this option, but it may be worried it could further damage the credibility of the United Kingdom among foreign investors. And that's what I was just talking about in regards to the prime minister and the treasurer politically. But also, this would have to do with the credibility of the United Kingdom government with foreign investors, because it's going to imply a difficulty in paying back debt. So that's something to think about. So now here it says it's more typical of central banks in emerging markets to step in to defend their country's currencies, he noted. Although Japan intervened just last week to prop up the yen for the first time in 24 years. So now my question for you guys is, how many of you guys heard about the Japanese financial crisis? If you heard about the Japanese financial crisis, give me a thumbs up. If you did not hear about the Japanese crisis, give me a thumbs down. Because what's interesting about it is it happened. You know what I'm saying? There was indeed a Japanese financial crisis. Like I said, there's also a financial crisis going on with the Filipino peso. China is also doing some interesting things with his dollars. I don't know if you guys heard about that, but there's some interesting things going on with the Filipino peso, and China's doing some interesting things with its dollar. So the behavior of our dollar here, the US dollar, is causing some very interesting issues. It's causing some very interesting issues. Yeah, and that's facts. DJ Elmo says Japan has been in a liquidity trap for decades, ultra low interest rates. Facts. And yeah, the crisis, you always use a SWOT analysis: strengths, weakness, opportunities, and threats. So if you see some weaknesses and threats, you know what I'm saying, which would be a crisis, you turn that into something that you can make money off of. Honestly, this crisis, this is how the world elites, the world millionaires, the world billionaires, this is how they maintain their wealth. They don't maintain their wealth by products that they sell. They maintain their wealth by lives that they destroy. You know what I'm saying? Countries that they destroy, worlds that they destroy. That's how they maintain their power. As long as they have everybody in a constant state of weakness and they can maintain stability, it makes them able to maintain and appear powerful. You know what I'm saying? Remember when I was talking about Ukraine and I was trying to tell everybody things that they might want to do to be on the side of the skyrocketing prices? Make sure that you have some investments in some commodities, so when these things skyrocket, you can benefit from that. You know what I'm saying? Maintain a minimum amount of fiat currency. You know what I'm saying? Different things like that. Buy some canned goods and just save them. You know what I'm saying? Stuff like that. The Bank of England will almost certainly have to be tougher moving forward, especially since its half-point interest rate hike unveiled last week now looks too small. So they just hiked their interest rates, and currently it's looking like that interest rate hike that they did was too small. So if that interest rate hike that they did is looking too small, what do you think is going to happen next? What do you guys think is going to happen next? More than likely, they're going to increase the interest rates again, which is not good at all. The economist Mohammed El-Iran, an advisor to Elands, told BBC that the central banks should hike interest rates by 1 full percentage point to try to stabilize the situation. Now, one problem with if they do hike the interest rate that much is that people who watch the markets are going to see that. They're going to sense that there's an issue that the British government is behind on, and it could cause fears and could cause a run on the currency and a run on the banks and a run on the stock market, which is going to push the price of the pound and the price of assets down even further. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says, in the meantime, a more fundamental problem could continue to fan volatility. While the Truss government wants to boost demand to take the edge off of a recession this winter, the Bank of England is trying to cool the economy so that it can put a lid on the fastest price increases among the G7 countries. That tension will reduce confidence in the path forward. If markets still don't have faith in the fiscal picture, I'm not sure how the Bank of England wins this, Rossiter said. Well, here's what's going to happen. They don't win it. That's what happens. They're not going to win, which is not a good situation for people. You know what I'm saying? It's not a good situation at all. So I want to show you guys something else here. And this is just another article backing up what we've been saying. And it makes sense that the markets are not really fond of this plan. Ricky says that Apple is moving production to India out of China. See? Yeah. I think that's correct, DJ Elmo. 9 billion has been wiped out of the stock market. That's a lot of people that have lost significant amounts. Yeah, and imagine the people that are not rich that have that money in those stock markets because of 401ks. So let's check this out real quick.
Stanley Tucci is back.
I don't know do you guys know who Stanley Tucci is? Some guy that gets to travel around and eat at a bunch of different places for no reason. Must be nice. You know what I'm saying?
I have just accepted Her Majesty the Queen's kind invitation to form a new government. Let me pay tribute to my predecessor. Boris Johnson delivered Brexit, the COVID vaccine, and stood up to Russian aggression. History will see him as a hugely consequential Prime Minister. I'm honoured to take on this responsibility at a vital time for our country. What makes the United Kingdom great is our fundamental belief in freedom, in enterprise, and in fair play.
Now let me just let's just go back on this. I want you guys to listen to what this lady said.
Fundamental belief in freedom, in enterprise, and in fair play.
She's making the claim that the UK has a fundamental belief in freedom, enterprise, and fair play. If you guys agree with that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree with that, give me a thumbs down.
Our people have shown grit, courage, and determination time and time again. We now face severe global headwinds caused by Russia's appalling war in Ukraine and the aftermath of COVID. Now is the time to tackle the issues that are holding Britain back. We need to build roads, homes, and broadband faster. We need more investment and great jobs in every town and city across our country. We need to reduce the burden on families and help people get on in life. I know that we have what it takes to tackle those challenges. Of course, it won't be easy, but we can do it. We will transform Britain into an aspiration nation with high-paying jobs, safe streets, and where everyone everywhere has the opportunities they deserve. I will take action this day and action every day to make it happen. United with our allies, we will stand up for freedom and democracy around the world, recognizing that we can't have security at home without having security abroad. As Prime Minister, I will pursue 3 early priorities. Firstly, I will get Britain working.
If you guys agree with Cameron, if you guys agree with Cameron that her head looks like an Angry Birds character, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down and let me know who you think that she looks like. If you ask me, she looks like Kirby with Trump's wig on. What do you guys think?
Working again. I have a bold plan to grow the economy through tax cuts and reform. I will cut taxes to reward hard work and boost business-led growth and investment. I will drive reform in my mission to get the United Kingdom working, building, and growing. We'll get spades in the ground to make sure people are not facing unaffordable energy bills. And we will also make sure that we are building hospitals, schools, roads, and broadband. Secondly, I will deal hands-on with the energy.
So I got a question for you guys. How many people watched my video about Queen Elizabeth? How many people watched the live stream about Queen Elizabeth? If you guys haven't watched the live stream about Queen Elizabeth, I'd advise people to go check it out. Now, the reason why is because in that live stream, we talked about how much money the royal crown is worth and how much the royal carriage is worth. We talked about that, okay? My question is, if the British government decided to sell all of the stolen property that it has and reinvest it into the economy, would that help the economy? Because if you guys recall, that royal crown is worth billions of dollars. The carriage is also worth billions of dollars. Food for thought.
Crisis caused by Putin's war. I will take action this week to deal with energy bills and to secure our future energy supply. Thirdly, I will make sure that people can get doctor's appointments and the NHS services they need. We will put our health service on a firm footing. By delivering on the economy, on energy, and on the NHS, we will put our nation on the path to long-term success. We shouldn't be daunted by the challenges we face. As strong as the storm may be, I know that the British people are stronger. Our country was built by people who get things done. We have huge reserves.
She said that Britain was built by people that get things done. Do you guys agree with that, or do you disagree?
Of talent, of energy, and determination. I am confident that together we can ride out the storm. We can rebuild our economy, and we can become the modern, brilliant Britain that I know we can be. This is our vital mission to ensure opportunity and prosperity for all people and future generations. I am determined to deliver. Thank you.
You have been listening there to Liz.
Yeah, I think Mary Poppins better get it popping with the economy if they want to survive. That's what I think they better do. Desmond says, tough crowd. I know, right? You know what I'm saying? That's the beauty of being able to live in a place that's not Russia or China. You know what I'm saying? You start booing over there in Russia or China, you might find yourself with a bullet in you. Or you might find your legs in a different dumpster than your torso is in. You know what I'm saying? And they'll be sitting up there talking about, we ain't seen this person in so long. Talking about the Americans took him and shit. Or they sitting, got legs and arms hanging out of a dumpster in the back of the Kremlin and shit. Like, yeah, I'm good on that. You know what I'm saying? When the UK's government, now led by Prime Minister Liz Truss, unveiled its plan to rescue the British economy on Friday, the reaction from investors was instantaneous. They did just like men on TV on In Living Color. Hated it. The British pound crashed below $1.10 by mid-afternoon, hitting a 37-year low against the greenback. All right. UK government bonds also sold off sharply. The yield on the benchmark of 10-year UK government bonds, which moves opposite of prices, leaped by 0.25 percentage point, a very large move in the world of bond trading. That pushed up borrowing costs. UK stocks, as measured by the FTSE 100 in London, hit their lowest level since March. Now, I got a question for you guys. Do you guys think that there's going to be a stock market crash, a severe stock market crash here in the United States? Damn, I bet you they buns are selling off sharply. That's hilarious. DJ Elmo says, actually, people were arrested for protesting against the Queen in the UK after her death. That's wild. And this lady literally just said, we pride ourselves on freedom, but you can't even have opposition to the Queen. You know what I'm saying? Again, that's just it's the hypocrisy that we deal with. Investors are dumping UK government bonds, which we expect. If the trust in the government is down, people are going to get rid of those assets because they don't believe that those assets are going to be paid back. You know what I'm saying? Again, this is basic economic stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no crystal ball here. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you understand anything about economics, or if you've taken a basic economics class, then you understand all of this stuff. So that's the question that you got to ask yourself. You literally have to ask yourself the question of, what is it that these people in the government are doing? What is it that they're thinking? How are they making these plans that they're making? Because how do you just go against basic knowledge, basic understanding? How does that work? But you see them doing it all the time. That's literally what this lady is doing. Shout out to Carla for answering the Nightbot. Appreciate it. So now, I don't think that we necessarily need to read this article because this all happened before. It's already hit parity with the dollar. You know what I'm saying? But this just reinforces that there were already signs that this plan that this prime minister had was going to fail. You know what I'm saying? And if we had assessed this situation, we probably would have said that this plan would have failed as well. Okay. So now what's going on now is that the pound is slightly rebounding, only slightly, however. You know, it's not fully where it needs to be yet. As a result of the yields on those bonds. But these things are going extremely slow. These things are going extremely slow. So I'm going to show you guys this article here from Bloomberg. All right.
It's the right plan that we've set out. This is about making sure that people are going into the winter not worried about ultra high fuel bills, which is what we were looking at. It was simply unconscionable that we could have allowed that to happen, and we could allow people to be facing that fear of not being able to pay their fuel bill. And it's also important that we're taking steps to improve growth levels in our economy, because if we don't, we're not going to get the high wage jobs. We're not going to get the opportunities. We're not going to get the investment. What I've been doing is taking action to help ordinary households who would have been facing fuel bills of up to £6,000.
Haven't you been reading the news?
We have
with
taken
respect?
action. We have taken action by the government stepping in, making sure that nobody is paying fuel bills.
Ms. Truss, this is a crisis.
More than £2,500.
This is a crisis, and many people are saying,
Man, it's crazy how she's so delayed, and like she just don't even pay attention to the woman that's asking her any questions. Like she's just like Joe Biden. Like Joe Biden to just barrel through a question with his old, rude, stinking ass. You know what I'm saying? And it's just like, damn, did you not hear me ask this question? And just continue to just mumble some nonsense right through whatever question is being asked. You know what I'm saying?
you've made it worse by your actions. Are you going to reverse what was announced in the mini budget in order to at least make things better now for my listeners who are not sleeping at night?
I don't accept the premise of the question. The action we've taken has been helping people with their fuel bills. That will start off this weekend. It's been helping
Gonna
people
have
with
to
their
accept
tax
it.
bills. People are going to pay less national insurance. But we are facing difficult economic times. I don't deny this. This is a global problem. But what is absolutely right is the UK government has stepped in and acted.
Yeah, so yeah, stepped in and acted and did nothing. You know what I'm saying? So now here it says the roller coaster ripping through UK markets continued unabated on Thursday. Sterling rebounded from earlier losses Thursday, climbing more than 1% to the highest rate since Friday as gilt yields came off of their highs. The currency had started the day down after Prime Minister Liz Truss defended her package of unfunded tax cuts. So now the reason why the currency started why it started down that day is because the markets already do not like her tax plan. That tax plan is not popular. And I think that the pound would have increased in value and started out better had there been some slight walk back. But because she just is determined to barrel through this botched policy, the markets reacted. And that's the reaction. You know what I'm saying? That's the reaction. The 10-year bond surged as much as 21 basis points to 4.22 after Truss's comments, but declined back to 4.1. And while the pound then reversed losses of around 1%, the currency is still on track for its worst month since 2016. So now the currency being on track for its worst month since 2016, what is that an indication of? What does that tell you if things don't change, what's going to happen? You know what I'm saying? Like, all of the indicators are pointing to one direction. The latest moves continue the upheaval seen across UK markets in the wake of the government's mini budget. The pound hit its lowest ever level against the dollar on Monday. Borrowing costs soared, and the Bank of England was forced to step in and prevent a pension fund crisis. I'd suspect that stabilization in gilts would lead to some short-term profit taking, said Baipan Ray, a head of foreign exchange strategy at Canadian Imperial Bank of Commerce, of the pound's move upward. But I don't think the fundamental reason to remain short GBP has changed much, if at all. The BOE's actions yesterday have made it clear the GBP is a secondary concern to stabilizing the move in long end gilts. Disorderly bond market conditions may have been soothed by the BOE's intervention on Wednesday, but the action will do little to restore confidence, according to some strategists. Now, if there's a long-term erosion in confidence, what will the financial consequences of that be? Shout out to Tia and Val for answering, and Carla for answering the Nightbot. What will that lead to, guys? If there's a long-term erosion in confidence and people are like, you know what, I don't trust this government, I don't trust these things, what is that going to cause? Other currencies around the world were also under pressure, and her economic policy was the right plan for the UK, Truss said in radio interviews. Now, it's proving that it's not the right plan for the UK. The results that it's having. The reality is that the BOE has applied a temporary sticking plaster to a fiscal credibility issue, which basically means that they're using fix-a-flat. They're doing a short-term fix for a long-term problem, which ultimately is probably not going to work. And I got to agree with AB. She probably does have some marching orders that she has to follow. So now here it says, we think that the market will keep pushing the BOE to make greater and greater intervention. Now, when they say that we think that the market will keep pushing the BOE to make greater and greater intervention, what do you guys think that intervention will be? You guys think it'll be interest rate hikes? If you guys think that the intervention that they're talking about are interest rate hikes, give me a thumbs up. If you don't think that it's interest rate hikes, give me a thumbs down and let me know what exactly it is that you think that it may be. Okay. But the problem will not be solved without a change in the message on the fiscal side. The UK's fiscal plan has attracted criticism from the International Monetary Fund and US government officials on the ground that these stimulus measures would fuel inflation. Now, I find that ironic that the United States is saying that when they're literally mirroring the same thing here. They're literally doing the same thing here, and the United States is criticizing her policies. So somebody make that make sense. Some members of Truss-owned Conservative Party are also calling for their reversal, and retailers are warning of the impact of sterling's depreciation. Traders are bracing for further volatile action in the pound, with the cost of hedging for swings against the dollar over the next month at levels comparable with the pandemic outbreak and the Brexit vote in 2016. While other maturities are slumping, the BOE's targeted intervention in longer-dated UK government bonds to quell the turbulence in that sector is taking effect. Even as the 2-year yields surged, were still trading higher as the currency snapped losses. 30-year yields are trading mostly unchanged on a day around 3.91% as of 11:20 a.m. New York time. The BOE has managed to disconnect the long end from the rest of the curve, said Rohan Khanna, a rate strategist at UBS AG. The BOE's pledge to buy these notes for a limited period was intended to calm turbulence exacerbated by forces selling from pension funds to meet collateral calls following the volatility in the rates market. that sparked a record rally in 30-year bonds, with yields closing over 100 basis points lower on Wednesday. So again, what we're basically seeing is the expected behavior that's being caused by the markets. Yeah, I agree with everything that everybody's saying in the comment section. You guys are absolutely right. So now here it says some strategists have been calling for the BOE to also deliver a more aggressive tightening policy to support the currency. But even that could fail to coax investors back, according to Stephen Barrow, head of G10 strategy at Standard Bank. I don't think that there's not going to be any fix for this in the short term. So what it's going to take is maybe 2 or 3 quarters of stable financial behavior, stable interest rates, and stable currency in order for people to start gaining their faith back in the pound. You can't just expect it to happen overnight because the government made moves. As a matter of fact, the government making those moves solidifies the reason that investors would have to fear some kind of negative event. So I don't think that it's justifiable or even rational for them to expect any kind of immediate correction. You know what I'm saying? If you guys agree with that, give me a thumbs up. If you guys disagree, give me a thumbs down. So now here it says, we fear that the market will still see this crisis-like situation as being generated by the government, and one the government will have to fix through an embarrassing policy reversal. See, and that's what I said. Basically, fiat currency is is similar to a physical measure of people's faith or trust in the government, if they see that government as stable or not. And as a result of these failing policies, people are losing faith in the government's competency and the government's ability not only to manage the country, but also their ability to manage monetary policy. And that's bad news. You know what I'm saying? That is bad news. That's bad news for recovery. And that's also bad news for future business. You know what I'm saying? He wrote in a note to clients, if not, we fear that the pound will fall much further. And he said the same thing that I said. You know what I'm saying? So there's that, ladies and gentlemen. And there's some more stuff that we could talk about as far as this goes. And we probably will, but we just not going to do it today. You know what I'm saying? So just remember, guys, that when it comes to the British pound, it's not immune to any of the things that anything else is immune to. And before you spend some, just remember that all money ain't good money. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys enjoyed the stream. If you're not subscribed to the channel, make sure you hit the bell icon twice, smash the like button, share this video out to all of your followers. Make sure you check out the backup channels, and I will catch you all on the next one. All right? Peace.